Basic but beautiful results. Art journaling doesn't have to be complicated or difficult. In this video tutorial, I'm going to give you some art journal basics that are going to produce beautiful results. And I'm going to take you along step by step. So grab a coffee and let's get started. Speaking of getting started, this started at the end of the previous art journal page. I used some Naples yellow and I had way too much on my palette, so I wanted to use up the leftover paint. So I grabbed a coffee filter, sprayed it with water, and grabbed whatever stencil was there, and I'm stenciling on the color. Now, usually I put an all over color on the coffee filters, but I thought today, what will happen if I just do some stenciling on there? The part that doesn't have paint is going to stay translucent when I glue it down. This was a bit of an experiment. So I did this coffee filter, which we're going to use, and a couple others using the leftover paint. This I put to the side and dry it off. So here it is completely dry, and I have a gessoed 7x10 art journal page. So I'm going to rip this up. Now, if you are a beginner, here's what you need to know about coffee filters. When you put paint on them and turn them into collage papers, they are amazing to collage with. I love, they give a little bit of texture. Any of the white part goes translucent. They kind of get that stained glass look. They get brighter when you put them on. And I really like using them. And I will link the video where I do some designer coffee filter collage papers. And you can see the process. And I hope you give that a try. So here I'm just ripping them up and gluing them down. Now, it just always amazes me how much I overthink this process because I have no idea where this page is going, and it really doesn't matter. It is the first layer. And with this first layer, I'm getting a lot of bang for my buck because I'm getting texture because it's collage paper. I'm getting pattern because it's been stenciled on, and I'm getting that first color choice. So it's really helping me get started. And you have to get started. So grab a colored coffee filter, put it down. There's your start point, your jump off point in there. From there, you're going to make decisions as you go. So the next decision was, what colors am I going to add? And I thought, okay, I'm going to add hooker's green and purple. Now, if I was adding hooker's green to the yellow, there would be no problem mixing those colors because they would blend well. They wouldn't create mud. But the purple with the green or the purple with that yellow would make an off color that I don't really like. More about that later. So here I've got the hooker's green and I am diluting it. Now, smooshing is the technique that I'm going to do here. Smooshing you usually see people do with inks or with distress inks or liquid inks. You spray that on and you dab the paper in it. Here I'm using acrylic paint. You just have to thin the paint and there's no right or wrong. You can have it thicker or thinner. It's going to give slightly a different effect. So play with it and see what you like. Here I've got it fairly thick still, and we get that dendritic patterning texture. So I've got color and a little bit of patterning in this. What am I using? I'm just using these acetate sheets that came with my stamps or stencils or something that I've purchased along the way. I just put them off to the side and I use them. Perfectly good. So here I'm adding that green to it, and it's looking very garden-like, very fresh at this point in time. Now, do you have to know what focal image you're going to put? No. You don't have to have all the answers. Just follow it step by step. And that's what I've done here. And you're solving problems, making decisions one at a time. Don't overburden yourself by doing too much. Now here I've got the purple and I'm adding some gray to it to tone it down. I want it to be a little softer, a little bit more muted. So that's a trick you can do with any color of paint. Just add a little bit of gray, white, and then you tweak that color. So it's kind of grayed that out. It's not as bright and as vivid. just somehow that's what I want it to do in my brain. So here I'm liquefying it and I'm going to smoosh with it. Now, when you're smooshing, you don't have a lot of control. It's you get what you get. It's going to be very organic, very unpredictable to some degree, and you got to be okay with that. For the longest time, I didn't do smooshing because it was too unpredictable. Now I'm embracing that organic feel and loving it. So if you try a technique and it doesn't work, don't dismiss it forever. Back, try it again because you're not going to stay in the same spot as an artist. You're going to evolve. So here I'm just putting it on the second acetate sheet and smooshing it on my page. I'm loving the way these three colors work together. But this purple, remember, if I had mixed it with wet green or the wet yellow, I would have gotten some off color that I don't want. Here I'm just using up some more of that leftover paint on a tag. And, maybe at some point in time, you're going to see me finish this tag. This stencil is from the Crafter's Workshop, as are all the stencils that I use. It's an oldie but a goodie, but it has very small openings. And I've struggled getting a good stencil through it until I'm using a stencil brush. I've refound the stencil brush. I'm putting on acrylic paint, stamping it off. It's almost a dry brush, and then I'm putting this on, and it works so incredibly well. Normally when I stencil, I do not. I use my makeup sponge and I'm perfectly happy with the results. But for finer stencils like this is the ticket. This is the way of doing it. So I'm putting this in multiple spots. The black is adding some contrast. It's also pushing back those layers and making them all meld together. Somehow this is just drawing everything together. I've got white space, I've got my three colors, I've got contrast. It's all coming together very, very nicely. Now this makeup's, or not makeup sponge, the stencil brush is from the Crafter's Workshop. They have two different sizes and these work incredibly well. I've sprayed the Murphy's oil soap on it and I clean them right after using. You don't want the acrylic paint to dry in the bristles, but I've maintained that. It works really, really, really well. I'm thinking maybe I could just stencil around here and get and edge it, but that didn't work so well. It didn't quite give me the effect that I want. We'll do that deal later. I am loving, loving, loving what I'm seeing here. The stenciling with the stencil brush works so, so well. So thinking I'm done with my background, I am now thinking about the focal image. What do I have in my stash? What do I want to put on? And while I'm thinking about that, I often go and I shade or edge around my page. This just kind of frames it, gives me some ideas about what if I really am done in my background. 99% of the time, I do edge it. Then I decided, you know what? I'm going to add some texture. Adding texture to an art journal page is another basic. We've got a little texture because we use collage papers, but I'm going to add more. I'm also going to add white, and I'm using the Crafter's Workshop modeling paste and another stencil. I will see if I can find the name of the stencils and put them down below. And I'm using a silicone brush to apply the modeling paste. And I'm going to do that in about 3 places. So here I'm knocking back what's behind it, adding this zigzag kind of pattern and adding texture, which I love on an art journal page or a mixed media page. Adding it now leaves it white. If I had added it earlier and then smooshed on top of it, some of that would have been colored and you would have gotten a slightly different effect. So the order that you do things, you can play with that and it will look somewhat different. Maybe I should do a video where I do the exact same thing, but in a different order, and we see where we get. That's an idea. Let me know if you're interested in that. So this is a geisha girl that I had in my stash. Not even sure where I've had it. It's been there for quite a while. It was all ready and cut out, and I'm positioning it. I don't like, there's kind of a area that I don't like, and I like where the texture paste is behind this, setting off my focal image. And I like putting my focal image a little off center. I find that it looks more pleasing if it's off center rather than center. But you can play with it. Here I'm using gel medium from the Crafter's Workshop to glue this down. And the reason for that is because I have that texture paste behind it. Takes a little bit more to get it to glue down. And I'm sealing the paper by putting a coat of the gel medium on top. Can you use fluid matte medium? Absolutely you can. It just might take a little longer. You might have to use more. But if you have gel medium, that's what I would use. Now I'm going to colorize my printable, and I'm just using a small brush. I do not spend a lot of money on my brushes. I get a variety of brushes, some small rounds, some filberts, some angle brushes, flat brushes. But again, you don't have to break the bank on the brushes for mixed media. As long as you have control and the bristles stay nice and neat, you're good. So here I'm just painting her hair. Nothing too fancy here. There's a little bit of texture by how I put the paint on. Now you did want to seal that with the matte medium, turn it into a non-porous surface. That just helps because the paint at this stage when I put it on doesn't just soak into the paper. It makes it easier to apply. It's like a coat of gesso. It just prepares it. Now I'm just using a pre-mixed craft paint for the flesh color here, but you can mix your own flesh tone using burnt sienna and white, or some oranges. I just find for ease, one little bottle of craft paint for flesh tone works well, or several for different flesh tones if that's the way you want to do it. And again, I've switched to a smaller round brush here, got smaller areas, and I'm just painting that in. I've opted to just paint over top of the face, although I do still see where the eyes and the mouth are, and I'll come back and fix that later. Now, the kimono here has a lot of pattern, and I could have chosen to paint in amongst those flowers with the purple and then paint the flowers, but I opted to go the easy route. Remember, we're going easy here. Nothing too fancy, but very effective. And I'm using an angle brush because I find I have a lot of control with it. And I'm just painting it purple. The same purple that I have in the background. I'm tying it all together, but I'm making it a little bit more solid. The focal image is going to have a lot more weight than the background, but I'm tying it in with a color in the background. I could have painted the kimono pink or some other color, but I like to use colors that are already in the background somewhere. You're tying it all together. I could have gone with the green. The yellow, I think there's too much yellow in the back. I don't think I would have gotten the contrast or the look that I wanted. But again, this is something you can do and try it out and see what you like. But again, your focal image you want to stand out. So I've painted right on top of the flowers. I've painted on top of the lines. And now I'm going to stencil in those flowers. This is another stencil, I think, Posies in a Row from the Crafter's Workshop. And I'm using the stencil brush with white acrylic paint this time. And I'm just going to stencil those flowers on top. I could have left it just solid purple. Now, if you don't have this stencil, which I recommend. I find I use it a lot. But if you don't have it, look at your stencils and find one little motif, one part of the stencil that you might be able to use in this way. Remember, you don't have to use the stencil in its entirety. One little area, one little star, one little squiggle is all you need. So you could have painted the printable beforehand. And if you do that, I would seal it with matte medium first and then paint it, cut it out, and then you could glue it on. Again, the order isn't so precious. It's what works best. So here I've grabbed my angle brush and I am shading the lines of the arms of the kimono here, and the outline of it. I want the focal image to stand up. I want to bring back those details that I painted over with the purple paint. Speaking of brushes, this is the one brush, my angle brush, that I do spend a little bit of money on because I want it to stay together and work well for the shading. And since I use that shading technique pretty much on every page, that's where I want, a good brush that lasts and gives me what I want. Just I had some lines there that weren't quite filled in. I just wanted to add a little bit shading around the face. And I shade on the outside of my little girl as well. So I peeled off the one detail off of that printable, and I'm just going to stencil in a flower up on the hair, tie in what's on the kimono in the hair. And I was enjoying using that stencil brush. So much so that I decided to stencil some of these flowers in purple on the background. Now, I found that this really didn't add to it, actually muddied the background. I prefer the background without this step. But I did it. It's all experiment. You try something, and if it works, you do it again and bring it forward into your repertoire of things to do on a page. And if it doesn't work, oh, you know what? There's another page. Grab my Posca pen and add in the details. I did paint the little puppy white, but it was off. I forgot to turn on the camera there. So now I'm just outlining it with the Posca pen. So here is a sneak peek of a new sentiment pack that I am working on. This sentiment pack will be called, wait for it, Moments and Memories. And it will be available for purchase along with all my other sentiment pack at NINNYSNAPKINS.com. There's a link to that page in the description box. So go and check out my sentiment packs and all the goodies, the mixed media goodies that Ninny has for you. So I've picked out a couple of the sentiments and I'm going to cut them out, addition them on the page. The sentiment packs are digital downloads that you can then alter the size to fit whatever size you're working on. You can blow them up, shrink them down using the settings on your printer. And I do give a link to a tutorial showing exactly how you can do that so you can maximize the use of these sentiment packs. Here I've cut it into two parts because you can manipulate that however you see, lots of variety. And if you watch my videos, you'll see how I do it. And then I'm just outlining it with the Posca pen here. It says happiness lives inside the smallest moments. I just thought that really went well with the girl holding the puppy. Just sheer joy and happiness. So the sentiment pack, Moments and Memories, is all about memories. So I'm just taking off the tape here that keeps all that gunk out of the coils. I absolutely love the color scheme here, unexpected, how everything came together. So you don't have to get elaborate. Basic can be beautiful. I hope you give something that you've learned in this video a try. Until next time, go get creative.